No.
Right.
There we go.
There
Are we live?
Yes.
Wonderful. Item 7, the city's auditor, KPMG LLP, chartered professional accountants will be in attendance to discuss the 2021 audited financial statements.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I will take you through the financial statements for the consolidated financial statements of the Corporation of Cities of St. Marie as of December 31st, 2001. The package has been prepared for you. The draft financial statements are there, and you're awaiting your recommendation for approval by council on August 29th, and then we will be dating your report. So just in the financial statements itself, the first report that you see is management's responsibility on the consolidated statements. And this is something when it's finalized that management acknowledges and will be signed as part of the final financial statements. The next page is entitled the Independent Auditor's Report, and that is our auditor's report that is there in draft. And it is an unqualified report, a clean report, as it has been for a number of years after we completed our audit. We've had no issues to mention in the report itself. The following page to that is a statement of financial position, again on a consolidated basis. I understand that council and have gone over sort of the city proper information, but as far as consolidation is concerned, this incorporates the water utility of the PUC, the library board, the services board, and there's a list of notes of what it comes in. So I thought what I do is just give you a highlight of what the differences are or what has come together in these amounts. So when we look at the cash equivalents that are available, some $57 million. Most of that is the cities, with other the other organizations such as Tourism, St. Marie, the Library, PUC, each contributing to the other couple of $1 million that we see there. Temporary investments and taxes receivable are, of course, all city. When we get to the accounts receivable of almost 36 million, 22 of that is related to the city, and approximately 13 million of that is related to the water utility receivables. There's a large investment in the government business, and that represents PUC Inc., PUC Services, and the subsidiaries associated with that group. So this is the LDC, or the electrical distribution. It is it's called a government business enterprise and can't be consolidated in the financial statements, but there's a lot of information in the notes that I'll just highlight for you that shows what the $83 million investment is, as well as the operations that took place there. And that is because it's not necessarily a governing body. The city is. It is a separate organization that sells services to the residents itself, and is regulated by the province. The accounts payable at 28 million. The city is about 22.5 of that, and about 5.5 is related to the water utility. Again, distinguishing the water utility from the PUC because the water utility is a division of the city. Okay. Then just to note the long-term debt and the liabilities, I just wanted to highlight that we've been asked to break those down separately between what is the city, what is the Public Utilities Commission, and the water utility, and what is the library as far as in the consolidated. And as you can see, there's only $1 million debt at this point in time that relates to the city itself. Okay. And then intangible capital assets, which is all the assets that are there, about 450 million of the 556 million to the city, with the 103 million related to the water utility. So that's the city infrastructure. The next page is the statement of operations. And just quickly highlighting fees and user fees of $47 million. 27 of that is the city, and 22, of course, is related to the PUC, which is their water charges. The only other item that is strictly PUC water is the developer contributions, which is almost $2 million, and this is for water installations that we've done as part of developments that has been given over to the PUC and part of the city of Manchester. At the end of the day, the annual surplus before the post-closure liability for the landfill is $38 million. This is the county number, which includes all revenues reported, even though they may be used for capital, and you can see that on the next page. And 28 of that relates to the city, and 8 of it relates to the utility. And then we discussed the liability for post-closure of the Landfill, which has gone up significantly, is an estimate in our it's an accounting charge on a cash charge of $11.6 million, really due to the change in the discount rate. So at the end of the day, the annual surplus was dropped to 26 million on a budget of approximately 24 versus 34 million. I just wanted to refer to the next page quickly on the consolidated statement of changes in net financial assets and show that it begins with the $26 million surplus and where that surplus was used during the year, again, to show, and in fact, $10 million in excess of revenues were used to finance the tangible capital asset additions during the year, which is the West End treatments, the West End Community Center, roads and infrastructures, as well as the buses that you'll see on the streets. So there was approximately $10 million of extra cash that was used that was not derived from operations this year. And with that, just highlighting a few of the items in the notes, the financial statements go on for a number of pages. These are required disclosures under the complete set of consolidated financial statements. Page 13, note 8 outlines the investment in the government business enterprising, being the LDC or the local distribution company in PUC Inc. and all there and services, as well as the next page results of operations of that investment as well. And there is some shareholder ownership by the city as well as some notes receivable from that that were initially set up on when the acquisition was occurred and developed from the city itself. The final item to mention is on note 17, page 22, and that is the breakdown of the accumulated surplus that has occurred over the years. And most of that is invested, of course, in the real assets of the group of the city, being infrastructure, roads, buildings, facilities, and for the benefit of the taxpayers. Excuse me, coming in at right now $556 million. And a breakdown of the reserves and reserve funds that are available for council following that page as well as part of the surplus. So I'll pause there to conclude my presentation, and if there's any questions, I'll certainly try to address them as best we can with the assistance of staff.
Does anyone have any questions? Any? Okay. I have a motion. Oh, trust. Sorry.
As mentioned, my name is Mitch. It's my first time running. Meet you all. Quickly, I'll go with trust. There's not a lot to discuss in these statements, so really package. Again, I'm going to clean out it's any concern with the statements. The trust is vital to the city. To be audited. The majority of the trust is all reported, mostly cemetery activities, pre-needs, and cemetery maintenance. There's a small increase in the year in fund balance, so that's mostly just fund balance is related to private rate plots, market permits, anything like that. All the balances are tied directly to cash from the banks, and nothing gives us any type of concern with the trust balances. That's about all I got over the trust. Not too exciting.
Does anyone have any questions regarding the trust statements?
Get stuff back. Just looking cities investing in government business enterprises. Since common shares, 15,668,000. Do you know how many outstanding shares that is? I see the number.
Yeah, so that is
because I know that that's all. Like I kind of asked that question at some point with somebody, and I guess it has a lot to do with when we created the structure. Right?
Yeah, and so there was a a requirement from the government in order to divest and separate those assets, but then also to be recognized that the city had made all the investments in it, so it had to be recognized. The city is a sole shareholder of PUC and all the companies. So that money represents everything that was attributable to all the issued common shares at that point in time. The number we could get you there available on they would be disclosed on the PUC statements themselves. So that is, and you have to recall that we have a direct investment in PUC Inc. as part of the city, and one direct investment in PUC services, which are separate investments. So that's a combination of all the issues. So I don't have that number in front of me, but the dollar value is what I would see. Yeah, the number of shares is irrelevant.
Okay, so there's common shares, how do we define special shares?
Special shares were set up for specific purposes in an event to get the interest and dividends and those types of things back out. It's just sort of proper strategy in order to say, okay, we're going to have a common share interest and to preferred that really doesn't participate in the growth, but we want to get something back each year. Right. So that's where that was, and that's part of our annual dividend.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Any mover and a seconder, resolved that the Finance Committee received the 2021 audited financial statements and recommend to City Council for approval. Rick and March, all in favor? And Shelley, are you going to be discussing the capital budget ranking criteria?
So you guys are free to go now.
Thanks for coming.
All right, thank you. We will head out.
Congratulations on that.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeff,
We'll see you down the road.
We'll see you tomorrow by any time.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much.
Take care.
The next item, that Lisa had alluded to, as part of the terms of reference for the Finance Committee, we do a review of the capital project ranking criteria. This has been established for several years now. It's worked very well. I just want to note there's only one change for this year that we put on, and that is to add a climate lens to it. So this is additional priorities or points are given to prioritize projects that assist in climate mitigation, adaptation, and greenhouse reduction. And there is two schedules because one's for existing assets. So these are maintenance of our current capital assets. And the other is for the growth and expansion projects, which is the 500,000 we annually allocate to those types of.
And you included the climate change example. Yeah. Malcolm, did you have anything you wanted to add with the ranking criteria?
No, it's as Shelley noted, it's been in place for a number of years now. Staff's familiarity with it and comfort level with working with it has been an evolving matter. On the one hand, staff always feel comfortable ranking and assessing the projects that are within their area. Feel less comfortable providing input on projects that are across areas. That usually comes with a reminder to staff that the senior management really have to be assessing everything. It has worked well for us. It certainly gives more vigor to the prioritization process. And I think council has seen the results of that when capital budget comes to them. So it's very clear as to what's the why things are ranked like they are, and gives a clear also for the items that don't get funded at budget time. It gives you a clear path that funds that don't get what we're doing.
Malcolm or Shelley, so are roads part of this or the separate? Good job.
They're separate.
Anyone have any questions? Hold on, sir.
I will look at this for a while.
I don't remember if I looked at it last year. I know we distributed. But in particular, because the climate change item has been added under the strategy section, I'm wondering if it's really appropriate or makes sense or fair or whatever the right terminology is, that alignment to strategy, improvement of quality of life, and especially climate change impact it's at the, like it's only weighted at 10%. And I just would like to throw that out for discussion, because prioritization is one thing, and then the next highest level ranking thing is funding partners at 25, and then these other sections, including strategy, quality of life, strategic plan, climate change, is really ranked or weighted, I guess I should say, very low, in my opinion, at this time when we are thinking a little differently about how we prioritize things. But present that for conversation.
Isn't the ranking a more reflection of the realities of financial struggles we have in the city? I mean, if I agree with what Dawn is saying, but the reality is there's only so much money. If it's a toss up between something crumbling on us or, environmental impacts, etc. As much as I'd like to go in that direction, I think the reality is we need to be able to address those issues that could become liabilities almost if we don't address them. I get your point. I guess we can apply a percentage to this, but in the end, I think it's important that those types of things will be top of this. That's from my sense.
And it's something going forward that, the weighting will still probably be higher for things that are legislative required by law. That's always going to be the highest priority, right? Where you're going to focus your resources. And this is what this whole thing is focusing our resources on that. So of course, we have grants, you're going to prioritize that, but it doesn't mean that we can't shuffle it a bit so that it comes up a little higher in the future. Because it is a focus, as you're saying, that's council's direction lately. We want to focus on greenhouse gas, climate change, etc. So it's not a problem. It's in the grand scheme of things, probably not going to change with something ranks though. But it could become a focus point that if you have, and the whole point of this piece is that if you have two projects that are ranked high because they're regulated, and we're down to limited resources, the one with climate change is going to bump up over the one that doesn't have anything related to climate change. So that's kind of where the ranking is going to come out and the basis for it. But I see where you're coming from. We need to put more focus on that. This is the first year that we've actually had this in here. So I'd like to at least have 1 year to kind of see how it plays out, and then definitely take that into consideration so that we can move it forward more. And the strategic plan, when the next council redevelops a strategic plan, that probably is going to be a focus area. So we'll have the outcomes of the year. That's going to increase this. But it is definitely very
I'm glad it's there, and I kind of get both points. Obviously, anything that's legislated health and safety, that makes sense. But I'm wondering if with the climate change component, if maybe we could add something under the funding partners. If there's a climate change or a green funding that's available, or would that really not make any difference in the?
if it's green,
Yeah.
funding. The staff is always looking for funding opportunities.
Yeah.
We're always trying to leverage
Yeah,
our
I know.
limited
I know.
resources. So, that would fall into play the same
Yeah.
way. But definitely, and as we look at these and prioritize them with SMT. So just to give you a bit of background on the process, all of the projects are going to go to SMT, and we're going to write the criteria. We're going to put all the numbers together and basically just based on those rankings, here's where we land. From there, then it goes to SMT and we have further discussion. So this may come out further in our discussions as well, because if there's a green project, there's a priority, and that's where Malcolm's part of those conversations as well. well, the different departments, towns, areas responsible for the climate change, all of those things are going to become part of the sort of thumbing process that we bring towards to council. And there's always the opportunity for council, because you get a copy of every project that is submitted. Ours is a recommendation. If you see a project that council wants to rank higher and fund over something else, because maybe it's green, maybe it suits your priorities more, there's always that opportunity.
The other point I would make on the grants and third-party funding, certainly at the level, it's a key alignment for the federal direction for green programs and climate change. So you will see ratings rise higher in number 5. That's because of the program area, because of the criteria.
Yeah.
Federal government especially. See the policy being very strict. So that it will be recognized in that area as well.
Well, other than to say, like, the future is now, right? And we can't, we make decisions and we have to live with them for a year, and then we can't do anything different for another year, and that's always really frustrating me coming from the private sector. So, like, we have a chance now to prioritize these things, and whether they organically come up, through the system, because as staff and as council, we're all aligned and we're all recognizing that we don't have varying opinions on what our priorities or how to prioritize things, that people are on the same page. And so I would just encourage that we think a lot about this, because another year is another amount of time that we have perhaps are not taking action that we could be taking to make a difference there.
And that can be communicated once we do a ranking. Will that satisfy? I mean, just for this year, and then we can look at it again, obviously, as we move forward, once we kind of see how this is open.
Yeah, and it ranks higher in the growth projects. So it's 20.
We don't have.
No, but you might see that with funding. Yeah, exactly. For growth projects, you might, instance projects, you might see green really good funding for that, and we have seen that in the past.
So we'll see how it evolves through the ranking as it is.
Yeah.
And then also through the process, when we do the prioritization meeting with SMT, we'll stress the desire of the committee to make sure we focus on prioritizing climate change projects. Is that fair for this year?
That sounds good. Is that good? Is that good? Okay, is there any other business? It's gonna be a quick one today. So we don't have a upcoming meeting. So everyone enjoy the rest of your summer. We've got a little bit left, and thanks, welcome. Yeah, thank you for getting all of this together, and it's great to be together. So we'll only have a scheduled meeting if we feel we need to have them, but we probably won't. So I need a motion resolve that the finance committee meeting be adjourned. Paul and Rick. See ya.
I'm out of here.
Thank you.
And Paul and Rick, it's been
Yes.
great. How you on the committee and on council?
Just wait until the phone call started. I'm a taxpayer too.
There we go.